guys, today we are going to have a go at understanding subordinate clauses. Now we have already done a lot of work on embedded clauses, and we know that an embedded clause is in the middle. So remember our burger buns, we've got our main clause just here. We then split it up just after the noun, we've got our comma, our embedded clause with another comma, and then we've got the rest of our main clause. So just like my example underneath, I have got the man, with a comma, who was tall, comma, sang beautifully. So that is my embedded clause in the middle. And by understanding that, this will help me in today's lesson. Now, something key to remember, that this embedded clause, this does not make sense on its own. If I was to take away our main clause and I was just have who was tall, it wouldn't make sense in its own, because you'd be thinking, well, who was tall? I don't know who. But because I've got my main clause, the man. The man was tall. So it adds more information to the main clause. So now we're going to look at subordinate clauses. Subordinate clauses can go anywhere in our sentence. So the subordinate clause can go at the beginning of a sentence. I put that in our yellow. So it can go at the beginning. It can go at the end of a sentence, and I put that one in green. Or, as we know, in the middle of a sentence. So I've got this as a subordinate clause, but we actually know that the ones in the middle are an embedded clause because they're in the middle. But the ones at the beginning and the end, we call them subordinate clauses. So for example, I have got 3 sentences here which are all just about the same. So our first one says, while the rain poured down, the puddles grew bigger. So that is my subordinate clause at the start of my sentence, and we can call them fronted adverbials. So my extra piece of information, I've decided to put that in the middle, at the beginning. While the rain poured down, the puddles grew bigger. So in the black, the puddles grew bigger. That would be my main clause. My extra bit of information is at the beginning with a comma after that. Next, I've got my embedded clause now on the second one, but I've decided to put that in the end of my sentence. So while the rain was pouring down, the puddles grew bigger while the rain was pouring down. For this, I do not need any punctuation, so you can see I've not put a comma in there. All I need to do is the puddles grew bigger, my connective, while the rain was pouring down. And then finally, this is what we've been doing in our English work. I have got my main clause at the beginning and at the end, but I have split it up after my noun, because the puddles, that is a thing. The puddles, with a comma, which were like swimming pools, comma, grew bigger. So you can see that with my embedded clause at the end, I've actually have to change what it says. I cannot copy what I have put in my subordinate clauses at the end and at the beginning. I can copy these two, and I can just switch these at the beginning and at the end. But with my embedded clause on this one, I have to change it up a little bit, and so I need to read through it and really try and make it make sense. And I want you to remember these words: which, who, and with. And they are the ones that we use for our embedded clauses in the middle. So our subordinate conjunctions, these are the words that we can start our subordinate clauses with. So I've used the example while, but there are lots and lots and lots of different conjunctions that you may use. On our Microsoft Teams, there is going to be a PDF of lots of different ones, so it might be worth looking at them for when we get writing today. But I have just written some down, spread it out. We've got after, we've got while, we've got unless, though, because, that, when, even though, since, before, until, once, as, whenever, and then we've got whether. So I could start my subordinate clauses using any of these words that I've just said. And remember, it will be worth having them up on a screen next to this video, so whilst you're doing your English work, then you can choose one that you could work with. So now, we're going to have a go at writing some simple sentences to then move on to then creating some complex sentences with our subordinate clauses. So some simple sentences. I want us to think back again to our escape from Pompeii. In our story, the volcano looks like it might be about to erupt. There's a massive earthquake going on in Pompeii. Seems to be ash falling down. Tranio and Livia have made their way out to the harbour, and I think they've just snuck onto a boat. So how would they be feeling, and what would they be doing in our story? So our simple sentences are our main clauses. Just a very simple sentence, and I've written 3 examples here. I've just put, Tranio quickly ran down the street. My next sentence, ash was falling down from the sky. And finally I've got, Livia was sprinting to the harbour. They're just 3 simple sentences. So now on your piece of paper in front of you, with a pencil, you can copy the ones that I've got here, but I want you to have around 4 or 5 sentences written down. So they could be anything from Tranio quickly ran down the street, ash was falling down the sky, Livia was sprinting to the harbour, and I want one that you can think of yourself. Any sentence, could be anything about the building, it could be about the mountain, absolutely anything. And once you've done that, guys, you can come back to me and then we can go on to the next part, okay? Pause. Okay, so hopefully you have written another sentence. So now, I'm going to make one of these sentences, so I'm going to make this top sentence into a complex sentence. So now, I'm going to be thinking of a subordinate clause that I could add on to my first sentence. So I've put my beginning in like an orangey yellow, the blue is going to be my embedded clause, and the green is going to be at the end. And remember, my extra piece of information, it cannot make sense on its own. So I'll explain what I mean. So my first bit that I've put for my beginning, my subordinate clause is while the thick ash made him choke. If I just cross this bottom bit out, while the thick ash made him choke, full stop, that wouldn't really make sense. So this extra bit of information says why Tranio was quickly running down the street. So while the thick ash made him choke, Tranio quickly ran down the street. So I've added this on at the beginning of my sentence, and I've put a comma, and I've started my sentence with while, which is one of my subordinate conjunctions. Remember, you could have used any of the subordinate conjunctions above, or even on that PDF, you could choose one. As long as it begins with one of those, it is a subordinate clause. Next, I'm going to go and move right into the end. So the end, I put my main clause at the beginning. Tranio quickly ran down the street. I do not need any piece of punctuation. All I need is my subordinate conjunction, while the thick ash made him choke, with my full stop and my capital letter at the beginning. Nice and easy. And then finally, my embedded clause. Now remember what I said at the beginning, our embedded clause, unfortunately, we can't really add this into the middle because it wouldn't really make sense. So remembering my embedded clauses can start with which, who, or with. And when we're talking about a person, we won't say Tranio, which, we would say who because he's a person. So Tranio, who couldn't breathe from the ash, quickly ran down the streets, and I am surrounded that with my commas. So guys, with your sentences that you have written down, your main clauses, I would like you to think of some subordinate clauses that you can add at the beginning and the end, and then also you might need to change it up a little bit for your embedded clause. Okay, another example. For my second main clause, I have used my main clause, ash was falling down from the sky. So I've decided to begin with putting my subordinate clause at the end of my sentence. So while the children ran to the harbour. So my sentence reads, ash was falling down from the sky while the children ran to the harbour. And remember, when my subordinate clause is at the end of my sentence, I do not need to put a comma in. Next, with my subordinate clause at the beginning of my sentence, I was going to say, while the children ran to the harbour, with a comma, ash was falling from the sky. Remember with this, when my subordinate clause at the front, I need to remember my comma. And then finally, my subordinate clause is in the middle. So ash, because that is my noun, I then put my embedded clause, comma, which was thick and heavy, and that with a comma, was falling from the sky. Really, really, really simple, guys. Just make up your own subordinate clause and add it to the end, add it to the beginning, or add it to the middle. And don't forget, because I know that some of us are quite forgetful when we're doing our writing, to always remember our capital letters and our full stops. I hope that makes sense, guys. Make sure to take a picture of your work. And I know that some of us are quite forgetful in class 4, so do not forget your capital letters and your full stops. Now, what I want to see from you is I would like for each sentence for you to write your subordinate clause at the end of your sentence, at the beginning of your sentence, and then finally in the middle, just like an embedded clause, just to prove to me that you really do understand it. So we should have quite a lot of sentences on your piece of work. Make sure that you take a picture of it, upload it to either Class Dojo or to Teams, and I'm very excited to see the rest of your work, okay? Hope you enjoyed it, guys.